All right. So here we go to Sony's recap. They just had earnings. Phil pulled some numbers. Go for it.
It is probably one of the most unexciting earnings seasons from Sony. MAU for the PlayStation Network did grow in December 2024. From our last check-in in October, it went from 116 million to 129 million. But you got to remember, this is looking at PSN Network. So this includes, to my knowledge, the PC games. And if you remember, there's a lot of controversy over them requiring PlayStation Network sign-in for Helldivers 2 and a lot of their single-player games. And they've actually just dropped the requirement for their single-player games. So this is kind of feeds into what we've been talking about in terms of stagnation in the games industry. Console has not grown for a really long time. It's not bringing new audiences into the fold. And I think this is just more evidence of that. And it's troubling. And the Microsoft situation is absolute shit. Just in terms of a ratio, it looks like Microsoft did maybe 29 million units in the last quarter compared to 65 million PlayStations. So they're maybe being outsold 2-1, probably even worse.
Oof. Yeah, I actually concur with what you're saying. Like, this is just another proof that this is a market share gains, right? I mean, the PC is helping, I'm sure, but this is like market share gains. Like, Sony is absolutely destroying Microsoft right now. And it's just not covered enough, really, in my opinion. Like, it is so bad out there, right? And I think, again, even with these Sony numbers, there's a little bit of misreporting and exaggeration because they had a really good quarter in terms of hardware sales in Q4, but the overall year was down, right? Year over year, which is not what should be happening at this time in the cycle. Having said that, this year should be better given what's happening with GTA coming in October. This should actually either flat or up hardware this year, which is actually really good for this year in the cycle compared to history. So from a historical trend perspective, we are below what we were last cycle, but we should be on par or above. But the fundamental thing here is this is the share shift. This is not an overall market growth, right? In terms of an install base, because Microsoft is just taking it on the chin right now. And that's like the fundamental problem with this whole cycle. And when you look at what's happening at Microsoft, their share of third party is absolute trash. Like it is like they are getting destroyed. Like they used to be like 30-40% of third party games like Call of Duty, Madden, FIFA, and they're at like in the 10s to 20s now, right? It is like so bad. They've like completely got decimated by Sony on third party because no one wants to buy an Xbox anymore, right? And not to mention the Series S is like half the install base, which is a shitty device that no one wants to play. So anyway, so this should get even worse when GTA comes out this year, because I think even to this day, GTA is considered a Sony title because it was exclusive for a long time in history. So that should even lead more to it. So Microsoft is really the real story here. You know, Sony is doing extremely well, but it's at the expense of Microsoft. And that's the point I wanted to make. And people are not talking about that because the reporting is not good from Microsoft about what's happening with their network. The hardware numbers are not being reported as well as either. So I think that's the real story, is that Sony's just taking the console market away from Microsoft.
But Chris, why is it so? Yeah. Like I just want to understand, like why is Sony so much better than Microsoft?
Because Microsoft's strategy doesn't make sense. Game Pass subscriptions is erased it is like devaluing all their content. There's no reason to buy an Xbox. There's no reason to be loyal to Microsoft anymore. I think that was a bad strategy. It's fundamentally not the right thing for the gaming group to create a subscription, all-you-can-eat subscription. And the only way they can really pull this out, as I've said many times, is to separate themselves from Microsoft and create an independent entity that has to operate on its own. And that it may be too late for that now.
So on the tombstone, it would say killed by subscription service.
Yep.
Okay.
Basically.
Good. That's two for you. All I have to do is tell you you're not funny before we record, and then you throw them out. Good job. So, Chris, I wanted to ask you, do we think GTA can grow the market? Like, is that the first time we're going to see any sort of growth?
Well, back to Phil's point, like, I don't think we're growing the market. I think this is a market share shift. And even if we see a big hardware bump this year from GTA, that's only the PS4 users upgrading.
Oh.
That's not like new users coming in.
You don't think? Okay.
No, because tons of people are playing PS4 because it's like their Madden
the
box.
chart we got in front of
box.
us. look at this. I mean, you look at the ratio between PS4 and PS5. There are still, and this is based on the leaked documents. Remember the Wolverine leak, the hack? Yeah. This is internal documents. And so we can see that the PS4 had more users in February, as late as February 2023, the PS4 had more users than the PS5 on PSN on a monthly basis. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's nuts. That's not the way it should be happening at this point in the cycle.
Is it like the iPhone syndrome where no one's really upgrading because there's not that much marginal difference between where the tech is like, it's not that much difference?
Well, yeah, I think that's one. I had this argument with my cab driver in Boulder yesterday. It's like,
okay.
This industry is so mature that, again, people are Madden players, FIFA players, and whatever. And they don't need a PS5 to play Madden or FIFA. It looks just as good on PS4 for the most part, right? That kind of use case for a device where you're not really playing anything else, there's no reason to upgrade, right? GTA actually does create a reason to upgrade because I think that game is as big as people think it will be. And so they will upgrade, but that doesn't mean they're going to change their buying patterns. They're still going to be primarily a Madden or a FIFA player, right? And they buy GTA, But as I've said before, is like, if you bring new consoles, upgrade consoles in the market, people buy software by definition. So you will see an uptick in both hardware and software this year. It will be good. But ultimately next year will probably be very, flattish to downish, right? Relative to this year with these new players. But it's a zero sum. I hate to say this, but it is a zero sum game on console, right? It is basically the same audience that keeps buying the stuff over and over again for the last 20 years. And that has not changed. That's the challenge.
I want to throw one other hypothesis, kind of like only because I saw this in my own household. So the next generation, Gen Alpha and very late Gen Zs, they grow up with mobile gaming. They grow up with the iPad hand-me-downs. They grow up playing Roblox and other things on their mobile devices or their iPads. And then with my son, what I saw was he graduated from his iPad play to a PC and he skipped console completely. Is it possible that we're going to lose some of the next generation of gamers? They're going to not even care about console because they get such great experiences on mobile and, their Chromebooks or whatever that they have for school, and they just might not even go to console.
I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen. And I think that's one of the concerns that both Microsoft and Sony have in terms of, what things like UEFN and Roblox are doing to that audience. The experiences that you get on console are very unique and it's aspirational. You can't get these type of experiences on mobile. I know there's exceptions to that, but like for the most part, you can't get the Madden FIFA experience on mobile or the real shooter experience like Call of Duty or GTA in particular, unless you're fucking Netflix buying $50 million for a tchotchke download, right? But anyway, so I think there was always been aspirational, like a basically an upgrade path, like a maturation is that you go from mobile to Roblox to UEFN, Fortnite, and then you buy a console and play the real games, quote unquote, So I think that will always be the case, but there is a risk that these people are so used to having such interconnected experiences from Roblox that they don't really replicate on consoles, that the content's not going to be as appealing to them. That's like the biggest risk, is like a game like GTA or Call of Duty is not going to be appealing because they don't get the same type of interactions and social experiences they've gotten on Roblox, right? So there's always that risk.
I want to actually support what Eric just said, because I had Google's head of gaming today on a podcast, and we were just discussing about Gen Zs and different audiences and their studies on it. And what Chris said, it was exactly what Google is saying, is that in order to connect with this audience, especially Gen Z, it was much more about features than the look of the game, like more razzy, more edgy. Like, no, it's more about social features playing together. And he also had a data that he pointed out that the younger generations are playing more on more different devices, actually. So they are using more PC. They are more, exactly. So they're using more devices. They're playing several more games than the typical, and they value these feature sets more than the specific look. And so, that's actually what might happen, is that they just don't resonate by these games made by 50-year-olds.
Yeah, that's the data that I'm seeing, is more cross mobile to desktop play and more social, like needing, we talked about this many, many times, that games are now the new mall. Like, for us dinosaurs growing up, we went to the mall to hang out, or we did the 3-way call, like where kids and Gen Alpha goes to hang out with their friends is in Roblox and the social experiences. And so if games are not on console or desktop going to offer that, we may lose that generation because they need those experiences and they expect those experiences. I think we really need to pay attention to how different it is to be a gamer if you're Gen Alpha versus what we grew up doing.
I totally get that argument. The thing is, that's what they're doing now. Like, what are they going to be doing when they're 18, 19, and when they actually matter? I mean, I think the other thing you have to keep in mind is that, like, what matters is the 18 to 44-year-old demographic. It's not how they're playing games now. It's how they're going to play games in the future.
Fair.
Right?
We never had that option. I mean, so you're right. We don't know. I think hopefully somebody's doing some longitudinal studies to make sure they're following these kids as they grow up.
Exactly. Yes.
Is that experience as a kid that we never had? We were lucky if we had co-op 2-player in the same room. Like, that was when I could play Halo 4 people on the screen at the same time. It was life-changing. And then that changed the way that I thought about games. Imagine now you've got this whole generation who is learning to play games in a different way. My expectation of just seeing how, people behave, I think that's going to have a different impact on their expectations.
Okay, but I would make the argument we've had social media like explode beyond all recognition. YouTube, fucking, not Facebook, obviously, Instagram, Snap, all TikTok, all these things are happening, and yet our market is basically the same. If not, it's growing slightly. Like that, it hasn't impacted our market yet, right? All these generations that have come up that have had access to all kinds of different media to consume, and we're still talking insane numbers for this business, right? Both mobile and console for that matter, right?
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about share of time because they're doing both. Share of time is going to social media and the addiction qualities there. And it's still going to gaming because they can socialize inside of gaming. I guess my point is that the behavior inside of gaming, having social components where I can play with my friends. Like, imagine when you first learned that you could go on raids with your friends and stay up till 4 a.m., you could only get that in that game or a couple of the, Ultima, online. Now that kids are having that experience, are they going to expect that type of, I log on, my friends are there, I can jump into any kind of experience. We want to play a funny game. We want to play a dress up game. And I think that's the difference.
I no. And I guess this is where I'd kind of I would counter a lot of people's arguments on this is that, as a kid, you have that kind of attention span of a gnat, right? And you go from one thing to another. As you get to an adult, your interests are aligned on certain things. And so you're going to be interested in Madden or a football game. You're going to be interested in a soccer game. You're going to be interested in shooters. Your tastes kind of crystallize as you get older.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I think the fundamental of wanting to engage with your friends, I do think you're going to want to take a vacation in a single player game. And we see that in the data. We see that as you get older, you're like, okay, I need a vacation from all of my friends, the sweaty games. And so I agree with you that your behavior and your tastes for what you do changes over time. I'm just wondering if maybe the whole line goes up differently because of how these kids are growing up. Anyway.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.